Cheryl Simmons, and welcome to the wsTOOLS session today. We're so excited to have Sandy present the webinar, Protect Customer, Vendor, and Employee Documents with Drawer. And so we'll turn it over to her. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat, and I'll try to capture those as we're going through the session and make sure Sandy sees those as well. But again, don't hesitate to answer questions. You will be in mute mode unless Sandy chooses to unmute you at any point in time. So watch out for that. All right, Sandy, take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Cheryl, and thanks everyone for joining. And I'm excited to have you here and to show you Drawer. But before we talk about Drawer, I wanted to just remind everybody that our customer conference is coming up in about a month and a half. It'll be the week before Thanksgiving. And this year, no surprise, I guess, we're going to an entirely virtual format. So you can participate right from the comfort of your office or home. And you can check it out or register at iscorp.biz/GPUC, GPUC. Okay, so now let's talk about Drawer. The Drawer tool enhances the Microsoft GP document attachment functionality, and it provides the ability to manage your employee, customer, vendor, and inventory attachments. It does this by securing them, giving you flexibility to organize even the most sensitive attachments in GP, and you can have up to 10 folders for each of those 4 modules and customize the security for them down to the user level, so users can access only the attachments to which their role has been assigned. So for example, in this screenshot here, you could have access maybe to grievances and injury, and I have access to termination or something like that. Whatever is needed can be set up. So I'm going to flip over to GP now. And before we get into using Drawer, I'm going to spend a few minutes looking at the setup for it. And it's important to understand this so you can get an appreciation for the security that's baked into this tool. So we're going to look at security task setup, security role setup, and user security setup. First thing though is you need to be logged into GP as SA, DynSA, or another power user account. And that's not for access to Drawer, but to these security windows. So I'm going to open security task setup, I think. Is that coming? There we go. So I already created some security tasks, and to make it easy, I just started all of them with Drawer. You can call them whatever you like, and you'll need to set up a security task for each unique folder combination you want to provide access to. So let's, for example, grab this one called HR termination. And here I need to pick Drawer. Oops, sorry. Up here I need to pick Drawer. There we go, and then Files. And here we'll look at Payroll because this is an HR one. So in this case, we have these 10 folders, and right now they're just called by the number 1 through 10 and then the color of the folder that you'll see in a moment. For this task, I've granted access only to the red folder, which happens to be termination. And one of these other tasks here is HR no termination. And for that one, I gave access to these other 9 folders and not the red folder. You can make the tasks as general or as granular specific as you want. And the same is true for the other modules as well. Inventory, purchasing, or vendor and customer. Whatever you need for your situation, you can set up. And this will make more sense as we get a little further into it. So after security tasks are set up, the next step is doing security roles. And you can either create new security roles or use existing ones. And to make it easy, we're just going to look at some that are already here called HR Generalist and HR Manager. And I'm going to pick payroll. So the security roles contain the security tasks that a user needs to access to do their job. And in this case, for the HR Generalist, I gave them access to the HR no termination task. And I gave HR Manager, let me filter this to payroll. I gave HR Manager access to both the HR no termination and HR termination task. And then again, you would need to create security roles or assign tasks to existing security roles for the other areas as well. You know, besides HR, you'll have to do that for inventory, customer, and vendor if you're going to use drawer in those areas. So finally, after we've done tasks and roles, then we assign the security role or roles to a user. I have sample data here, so it's pretty generic, but I've got user 2, and one thing to note is that roles are set up per company. So if you have a multi-company environment and want a user to have access to the same roles in multiple companies, you'll need to assign them for each company. In my case, I only have one. And here, user 2 is the HR Generalist, and user 1 is the HR Manager. So in a moment, we'll look at what each of those can see. Okay, so again, you would also do this for the other areas, the other modules where you're going to use drawer. So now let's look at actually, oh, and one other thing to point out is that users assigned to the power user role automatically have access to all of the folders in the drawer window across all the modules. So now we'll look at using drawer, and I'm going to just start in customer maintenance and grab any customer record. And to get to drawer, it's under the additional menu, and then we'll pick drawer. And here, these folder names are what we saw when we were doing the security task setup. I guess except then we were looking at HR, but they just have the module name, in this case RM for receivables management, and then the color of the folder. Except this one down here, I have renamed already to collections. And if we want to rename another one, we can do that. You just right click on it and select rename. And so let's do something like that, warranties. So now we've got a folder called collections and one called warranties. And these names aren't just for me, these are for anybody that has access to these folders will see them as these names, unless they were to rename them for something else. One other thing to point out is, I'm going to close this. Those names are just for the customer. And if we're looking at drawers for items, vendors, or employees, they don't have those names. And also, one newer feature of drawer is that it isn't necessary to go to, you know, one of these maintenance windows to open it. We can open it directly. And then providing we have access to them, and again, I'm in as a power user, so I do, you can see all of these folders for the different areas. So if we look at any of these, we see the folders that the user has access to. And we've looked at how to rename a folder. And before we take a look at adding an attachment to a folder, I'm going to switch to a different user so we can see what drawer looks like for a user with more limited access. Okay, so I'll just go here and change user, and then we'll start with user 2. And if you recall, user 2 is our HR generalist. So the HR generalist has access to 9 of the 10 HR folders, and not the last one, the termination folder. So if we go here to employee maintenance, and I'll do, and I select employee, or excuse me, drawer, then we see those same folder names that we had already set up. We don't see termination because HR generalist does not have access to the termination folder. And if we switched here to another module, such as vendor, and grab any vendor, we don't see any folders at all because the HR generalist does not have access to those. So let me flip back to employee, and we'll grab Alan again. And you can see here by this plus button, I've already attached a few documents for Alan. These are specific to Alan, not any other user. And we can add more by right-clicking on the folder, and instead of selecting rename, we'll select attachments. And this opens the Microsoft Dynamics GP document attachment management functionality. So then we can just go and grab a document. Oops, wrong folder. I have them named really nicely, documents 1 through 10. So I'm just going to click OK here. And now you'll see that we've got a plus button here to show there's a document attached, and we've got document 9 there. If we clear here and select another user, such as Tim, and go back to drawer, and we could have just kept drawer open and selected Tim here, you'll see we see all the folders because we have access to those, but there's no documents attached here because those documents were attached to Alan, not Tim. So these are all empty. And again, we don't have access to the termination folder because we are logged in as the HR generalist who does not have access to that. So let me switch user once more, and we're going to log in as the HR manager, which is user 1. And we'll see that we can then see that termination folder.
While you're doing that, Sandy, I'll just remind people if they have questions to put them in the question box or the chat box, and we'll get those answers.
Cool. Okay, so as I mentioned, we can open the drawer from one of the maintenance windows or can just open it directly. So I'll do that here. And again, just to point out, how secure it is. If we did a module other than employee, I don't even see any of the folders because as the HR manager, I don't have access to those. So we'll do employee and we'll pick Alan. And I see the documents that were attached for Alan and the one that the HR generalist just added for Alan. And I now see the termination folder. And if we switch to employee Tim, then I can see here under termination that we have a resignation letter for Tim. I didn't see that as the HR generalist, but now as the HR manager, I can see that document. And I think this shows you how flexible Drawer is, and that you can give users access to as many or as few folders as needed for each of their roles. And that's pretty much it. That was a look at our Drawer tool, and I think this should give you an appreciation for how powerful this tool is and how useful it could be in HR and the other modules, customer, vendor, item. I thank you a lot for joining us today, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Well, thanks, Sandy, for presenting. I don't see any questions at this time, but I think you did a great job of presenting how you can rename the folders, add attachments, as well as assign security, which is the key to this functionality as well, of who gets access to what folders. So thank you for doing that. And again, as Sandy pointed out, we do have our customer conference coming up here in it's about 6 weeks. So please take a look at that. If you have any questions, reach out to our sales department. We certainly would be glad to talk about it as well as get you signed up. Otherwise, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you.